everyone. Welcome to the 5-Year Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I kick off the next homebrew project, pick the brain of my homebrewing expert at Buckeye Brewcraft, finish up my chat with Paul from Brewery Faisan, and review a cybernetic IPA. But before we get this party started, what is your favorite American IPA? According to Untappd, mine is a 6.8% ABV beer from Treehouse Brewing in Charlton, Massachusetts called Julius. This came from my beer pal Mark, who keeps me stocked up. As hazy and as juicy as this beer was, I would never ever have guessed it was an American IPA. It was amazing, a masterfully crafted beer. So smooth with a great hop tropical balanced flavor. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, where I document my homebrew adventures, I kick off the Holiday Cream Ale. As mentioned in the last episode, I had decided to use a cream ale for the base for the project that would be conditioned on cranberry orange relish. My go-to homebrew store, Buckeye Brewcraft, provided the supplies I would need: grain, hops, and yeast. The grain bill was pretty simple and consisted of 80% American pale malt, 13% flaked corn, and 7% Munich dark. Perfect for a cream ale with a little bit of a twist. When I got started on brew day, I made sure that I had all my equipment and supplies ready to go for a 60-minute mash. I began to heat my strike water in my brew kettle, 2 3/8 quarts up to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. While this was happening, I placed my grain in the brew bag and mixed in 1 ounce of rice hulls to ensure that dough balls wouldn't form during the mash and ruin my efficiency. I used my instant read thermometer to make sure I achieved my desired strike temperature. I pulled the kettle off the heat and plunged my brew bag into the water and used a slotted metal spoon to mix up the grain to make sure it was all soaked. I do love the smell of mashing grain on brew day. The strike temperature was 145 degrees Fahrenheit, about 7 degrees lower than expected. I had already preheated my oven on its lowest setting at the onset, so I covered my pot with the lid and placed it in the oven with the door cracked. Every 15 minutes, I stirred the grain and took a quick temperature reading to ensure that I was right around my target of 152 degrees Fahrenheit. I also began to heat up sparge water in 2 other pots. I would need about a gallon of water at 170 degrees Fahrenheit to achieve my 1.5 gallon starting volume. I used a 2-cup measure to slowly rinse the grain and extract as much of the sugar as possible. With the heavy-duty brewer's gloves, I gave the brew bag a squeeze between pours to accelerate the process. Once I had my volume, I took a pre-boil gravity measurement with my hydrometer to make sure I was on track. It measured 1030 at 132 degrees Fahrenheit. When adjusted with the temperature calculator, it came out to be 1043, which was pretty close to what I needed. Next episode, I start up the boil. Homebrewing can be overwhelming, especially if you are just starting out. Every month, I set aside a few minutes to talk to my go-to expert, David Young, owner of Buckeye Brewcraft in Columbus, Ohio, and ask him some common questions that homebrewers have. In my homebrewing experience, it's happened more than once that fermentation seems to stall out. What does one do when you have a stuck fermentation?
It happens in points of the year here in central Ohio, where you are as well. Temperature, it really should have nothing to do with temperature, but somehow when the temperature is in between winter and spring, and then again in fall into winter, we tend to see it. Again, like HVAC in your home should completely take away any of these issues, but we do tend to see it. There are essentially 3, I might revise this like I so often do, but there are 3 major things to consider with stuck fermentation. One, and what's probably the one that comes to everybody's mind first, is overall yeast health. Did you give enough time to let your yeast be able to build a good, strong, thriving carnivorous culture to keep themselves going And in doing that, did you give them a nutrient base that they need, whether it's from the wort of the beer itself or the must of the wine or whatever you're making? Do the yeast have a happy place to live from a nutrient standpoint? And then thirdly is temperature. Thirdly, did I even give a second one?
I don't think so.
So, so let's take a step back. Let's talk about yeast health. Yeast yeast health being the most critical part. As with anything you buy from a homebrew shop or online supplier, whatever your needs are, where you get them, hopefully you're getting good quality ingredients. We, every week go through our walk-in cooler to make sure that yeast dates are within this correct spec range. And then as a homebrew store owner and a avid brewer, we get to have fun with the stuff that goes out of date spec and brew it into some weird stuff. So that's a whole different topic for another day, but it's fun to see what you can do. Anyway, make sure your yeast is healthy, that you're getting it from a reputable place and it's good yeast. If it's questionable yeast, you always have the opportunity to make a starter. Number 2 is going to be time. I'm saving the least exciting one for the middle because, let's start strong and end strong here. But time often is the thing that most people don't consider. We live in a very fast-paced world of instant gratification.
True.
And sometimes yeast aren't those people. Sometimes they just take a little longer to get going. Lager yeast and some British yeast personally are what I have the biggest challenge with that on. And I'll tell you, like, straight out point blank, I'm an impatient brewer. I usually schedule brew days on a weekly basis. And that means I want stuff to be done and move on and whatever from there. So having a 48-hour delay on yeast showing activity sometimes will just make me think, oh, crap. We'll just pitch the whole thing, start over. So giving it the proper time to let it bloom, develop, and do its thing. Much like I talked about with yeast health, having a starter can help here. This is also a situation that can kind of tag team from our last conversation, Brian, about yeast pitch size, where doubling up your yeast pitch size based off the type of beer may be a good thing. Lagers being the most key example of this. Again, high gravity beers as well. Thirdly is going to be temperature. And this is the big one that can make or break your fermentation. Now, on the basis of this topic, specifically on stuck fermentations, I'm going to give some tips that I have found on moving through that. However, don't necessarily think that what I'm saying is going to apply for every fermentation. We're talking specifically stuck fermentations here. So let's say that you're brewing an imperial stout and you want to use some London fog-ish British yeast on it. You throw the correct dose in there. You even created a starter with it because you were concerned everything's nice and clean and healthy. It just doesn't seem to be doing anything. Or what happens more commonly is you'll drop about 15 points in gravity and you'll have another 25 points of gravity to go, hence stuck fermentation. There are 3 really big tools that we use for managing that. All of them are going to provide some sort of insulation to your fermenter and generally a heat source. Or as a thing called a firm wrap. It's what we use most commonly. It's essentially the guts of an electric blanket. In fact, I have an electric blanket, a king size electric blanket at home that I bought from, I don't know, some online retailer many moons ago that I specifically use to cover my big fermenters because an electric blanket can be great. The downfall with those, just so that the audience can know, is that most of them have timers and the timer's really annoying. So if you can find one that's just the plug and go and connect it to something like an Inkbird, where you can let the Inkbird control the on off of the heating element, then great. Firm wrap specifically, that is like I said, it's kind of the guts. It's a sheet of a heating element that you can wrap around a fermenter, tape to it, attach however you want. They're pretty safe, 110 volt power source. Ideally, you would connect it to something like an Inkbird to control the temperature, but you could also monitor manually as well. Here, I would also recommend taking a jacket with an asterisk here, and we'll get back to that. Take a jacket, a big winter jacket or something, beach towels that you can wrap around it as well to make sure that you're insulating the heat that's going in and it not just going away to its path of least resistance. That is by far 100% over the most successful way to regain some activity on a stuck fermentation. Other forms of this would be taking your fermenter and putting it into a warm water bath. Measure the water to be something like 80 degrees, put your fermenter in it, let it kick off, and then remove it from that. Because the other thing to remember is that once yeast go, they generate their own internal heat. Yeah, the
Right.
warmth is a byproduct of what they're doing, so they'll keep moving based off what they're creating. And then lastly, would be just wrapping it in some sort of insulating material, like a big jacket or a blanket or whatever. Now, I told you there was an asterisk on it that I wanted to come back to. Do not use your brand new North Face fleece jacket or whatever super expensive piece of winter gear to cover up your fermenter, because that sucker will get too warm. It will blow through that airlock and you will have a ruined piece of clothing. Don't do it.
If you have a question that you'd like answered, reach out to me at 5beerplan@frontier.com and put Ask the Expert in the subject line. Also, if you are ever in need of homebrew supplies with great customer service, expert answers, and high-quality supplies, please check out Buckeye Brewcraft. You can find them on the web at buckeyebrewcraft.com, and tell them that you heard about them on the podcast. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. In this episode, my conversation with Paul from Brewery Faisan comes to a close. We get into topics of brewing, what kind of beers he has coming up before year's end, and interestingly, self-preservation. I can't stress it enough. Drinking local is a way of life. It takes some effort on your part, but in the long run, you're going to find a better quality product and support a business that pours back into the community. Get over to Brewery Faisan soon. They're celebrating their 6th anniversary this month, and you might even get to enjoy Sympathy for the Abyss, which is a fantastic black Cascadian dark ale. So you mentioned you're the brewer also. I assume you homebrewed before you got into commercial brewing.
Yep.
How long did you do that?
Probably about 5 years before we opened.
And are you from the Detroit area then originally?
Yeah. Grew up in the suburbs, moved downtown. I got a job downtown in my early 20s and stayed here ever since. Love the city.
All right. Brewing facility, you mentioned you've got, 4,000 square foot-ish of production facility. So how
Yep.
large of a brewing system do you have there?
Yeah. So we ended up acquiring another brewery's production. So they had a tap room and they expanded into production. So then they were scaling back because it didn't quite work out. So we bought their equipment used. So it was on the larger side than what we had kind of planned, but we've made it work and it's been great. So it's a 15-barrel brew house. And then all our cellaring tanks are 30-barrel.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what kind of output do you make in a year?
so last year we did 300 barrels total. So we're about the same this year. That's the nice part is, I don't have to brew that often. I'm producing a lot of beer with every batch, and then I can focus on sales and other things.
Yeah. So what kind of a brew schedule do you have? Like how many days a month are you actually in the brew house doing that?
Yeah, it works out to about once every week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because you're bivocational, is that something you do on the weekend then?
Yeah, typically.
How many beers do you have on tap there at Brewery Faisan?
So yeah, we have right now 12 on tap, and we have a cider, and we have 2 wines.
Okay. Sounds like a little something for everybody.
Yeah, that's the idea.
And then do you have a core rotation of beers, or are they constantly changing?
We actually typically keep the same rotation. We have some like seasonals now, but they're basically the same. We just kind of rotate through which seasonal we're doing. But yes, it's a very solid, say 8 beers that we kind of always have on, and then rotate out the other 4.
Okay. That's interesting because again, having been there just one time, I saw the 12 you had on tap or 10 on tap, whatever it was. And, I wasn't sure how many of those were regulars, how many of those were one-offs.
Yeah, and it's surprising. Every one of our beers has like really big fans, and I really appreciate that. And it also is a little painful because like we wanted to bring on the cider, and so to do that we had to take off one of the taps. And then as soon as we did that, people were like, "When are you going to bring that beer back? I loved it." It's like, oh no. So
I think that's a constant battle you're always going to have to face because whatever beer you've got on tap, there inevitably is going to be one person that's going to be their favorite beer, and they're going to ask you about it every time they come in when it's not on tap.
yeah, it's wild. I was not envisioning that. It is wild.
But that's a good thing though, because
It
that means
is a good
people love
thing.
your beer.
Yeah, it is. They eventually do find an alternative, and So
So with your anniversary coming up, do you typically brew like an anniversary beer or have like a one-off bottle that you give to your members and such?
so we have done that. We do have a triple coming out for the anniversary. That's another one that we had to kind of take off for a minute so we could do other beers, and then immediately people are like, "Where's the triple?" So that'll be back as kind of a special for the party, and we do have like a yearly party for all our Mug Club members, and it's typically just like a big pizza party and beer and stuff. So
Okay.
yeah,
Do you put a special beer together for that as well?
no, we haven't. I guess it's just more a party for like thanks for being supporters, I guess.
Okay. Well, just looking back at some of the beers that I had, Sympathy for the Abyss. I'm a big fan of like Cascadian dark ales. I really, really enjoyed that one. That was really
Oh,
tasty.
cool.
And
Thanks.
your Spy Catcher, which is the Tamave Czech Dark, that was amazing as well. And the Farmhouse Ale, so the Saison de Trois,
Yeah,
that was pretty stellar too. So
cool.
I've had some pretty good beer from your brewery so far. I'm really impressed. You really execute things well, and the flavors are there. And stylistically, it hits the mark as far as my limited exposure goes with BJCP styles and such.
Yeah.
But it's really good stuff. Do you barrel age anything?
We have done some barrel aging. So like a few years ago, we did that as like kind of a special release for the our anniversary party. But yeah, it's been a while. I should get back into it. But like I've said, we have the 15 barrel brew house, so it is kind of hard to do these one-off beers
Right.
or specialty beers. Like it's a lot per batch. So that is generally why and this was my focus from the start. It was like I wanted to make traditional styles. So that's what we end up doing in large volume. So
Do you ever anticipate getting maybe a 5 barrel system to accommodate that in the future?
a boy can dream, I guess. So yeah.
The price of stainless comes down.
Yeah, right.
As a brewer, what is your favorite part besides the cleaning? Because everybody loves that part of the brewing process.
Yeah. It's not so bad. It's all automated. Like you just set it up on the loop and they're mostly self-cleaning. I don't know. I mean, I really like dialing in recipes. I'm an engineer by day, so I really like the troubleshooting aspect of kind of running an industrial process and figuring out where efficiencies can be made, how recipes can be made better, getting feedback and applying it, those kind of things, I guess. And I don't know. I really like now that we've kind of honed in on a few recipes. Like I really like just producing them. Like that means a lot to me. Like we have a Kolsch and it's been our Kolsch ever since we opened, and I'm really happy with it. And we've made tiny little tweaks here and there, but otherwise it's great. So yeah, that's what I like.
Okay. Was it hard to adapt your homebrew recipes to such a large system? Because usually, I mean, again, some of the places I've talked to, they're going from 5 gallon brew systems to 5 barrel or 10 barrel. And you're going to, what'd you say, 30 barrel?
We can do a half batch into the cellaring tank, but if you really want to produce a lot, you can do 30 total. It was actually pretty simple. I mean, I did have help. Like the gentleman that we bought the equipment from kind of walked me through the first few batches. And then there's software that kind of helps you scale. You can give it the inputs at a homebrew size, scale it up to a professional size, dial in the efficiencies. The thing about brewing equipment on like a commercial setting is like it's designed to make beer. Every part of it is like ideal for making beer. Every valve, every angle, everything about it is like set up to make beer. So it was actually pretty easy, at least for me to make the transition, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So personally, I'm still currently brewing with just like 1.5 gallon batches. I did a Saison earlier this year and I didn't realize it. I had some Saison yeast hiding someplace and it like fouled this cream ale I was going to make for a competition this fall. And it came out spicy. And I was like, dang. So it was my first dump. I was like, okay, well,
Okay.
it was just a gallon, but
Yeah.
still, it's like, oh, I'm sorry to see you go.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't get past it. Again, you're talking 15 barrels. Have you had to drain dump some beers in the past?
Yeah, that's part of life as a brewer. It's if you're making beer, you're dumping beer. Like it's inevitable. There's also a saying like good brewers dump bad beer. Like everybody will have a bad batch. There's no preventing it. You can try as much as you can, but like sometimes like you're saying, like an infection or a
Mm-hmm.
cross contamination, like
Yep.
that much you can prevent if you're diligent enough. But sometimes the yeast just doesn't cooperate. It's the way it is. You're at the mercy of an organism that you hopefully made happy enough to produce the beer, and sometimes it just doesn't. And there's variability, like different malt through the year can have different characteristics. And sometimes it's like, especially on a commercial scale, it's like it's not that the beer is bad, it's just out of the parameters that you were going for.
Yeah.
And there's really no way for you to like market it. You don't really want to take on, like, sure, it's perfectly drinkable. It might not be like, if it was a dark ale, it might be a brown instead. But if like the dark malt wasn't the right color that you thought it would be, but then you have to consider like, okay, but do I bring this beer on and try to sell it? Do we create a new brand, or do we just dump it and try again, even though it was perfectly good beer? But that's part of
Sure.
the game.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about that from the standpoint of even just not looking stylistically like what you're expecting either.
Yeah, but it's part of brewing. You're gonna dump some beer. Yeah, and it's always, I will say, we do a lot of like, I'm also the QA/QC. Once the decision is made, like, let's just dump it. It always is like a huge relief.
Yeah.
It's like, now I don't have to think about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move on to the next batch. Like, that one just didn't work out.
That was kind of the feeling I had too, because I had conditioned it on fresh strawberry because it was going to be a strawberry cream ale, and I waited a couple days and I tasted a little bit, and I'm like, okay, it's not quite there. I'll wait a little bit longer, and I was like, well, maybe if I throw like a little vanilla in it, maybe that'll help. Didn't help, and I was like, all right, I just need to dump it. And I left it there for like 3-4 more days before I finally got up the nerve to do it. It was hard to do.
Yeah, but I'm sure cathartic.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then I was like tearing everything apart and soaking it BBW
right.
for days.
Yeah, and then you go back. You're right. You think about, well, what could have caused it. It makes you reevaluate things.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the beauty. I mean, you're an engineer, I'm an engineer. We're very process oriented. We follow like the scientific method with a lot of our thought processes. And so brewing's just like that. You're just trying to like eliminate all these variables that could possibly go wrong in your process. I got a little complacent. I was thinking I was doing a pretty good job of keeping things clean, and lo and behold, Saison yeast bit me. So we talked a little bit about your beers. Do you have any other kind of new and exciting releases that are coming up before the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the triple. That's going to be fun. I like that beer. We're bringing back a lavender wit beer that is really popular. So we do the black IPA that you mentioned, the Sympathy for the Abyss. That's been like doing really well. So I'm brewing another batch of that soon.
So what is your favorite style of beer?
I think Saison. If I go to a bottle shop and they have Saison DuPont, it's in my cart immediately. Yeah. Yeah, so I love about them. They're complex, but they're simple, almost like a wine in many regards. I like the effervescence. I like the dryness. It's just a wonderful beer.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up, I have one last fun question that I ask everybody. So if you were a beer, what style would you be and why?
Okay. I guess I'd want to, like, because if someone drinks me, I die, right? Like, so I'd want to be somewhat self-preservationist. So I guess I'd have to say like barley wine, because like most beers are born dying. Like, you brew like a Kolsch, that beer has a short lifespan. As soon as we package it, we got to sell it and turn it over because it's only got a few months. So I guess the barley wine, a beer that can go down in a basement and live many years and get better with age, I guess.
That's a great answer. That's not one that I've heard as of yet. So I really like that. It really, I think, fits with your personality as we've been talking tonight. Paul, I really appreciate your time. It's been great to get a little bit of insight into what's behind Brewery Faisan. Best of luck to you and your wife as you celebrate the 6th anniversary coming up here in October. Gosh, I hope to get back down there again before the snow flies.
Awesome. Yeah, love to have you.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Cyber Sioux IPA from Toppling Goliath Brewing in Decorah, Iowa. From the brewer. In the battle against boring IPAs, this beastly brew has your back. It's bursting with tropical fruit notes from a killer squad of Citra, Mosaic, and Simcoe hops that create mango, pineapple, and fresh tangerine aromas. Raise your glass and charge ahead. With Cyber Sioux on your side, you'll surely come out the victor. Without further delay, So this is a 7.2% ABV American IPA. Toppling Goliath is one of my favorite breweries. Pseudo Sue is probably my favorite pale ale. If you've never had it, I recommend trying to get your hands on it. You won't be disappointed. So I poured this beer out into a small tulip glass. It pours a nice light golden color with a fine foam head on it. On the nose, it's got that sweet, juicy mango, pineapple, and tangerine aromas that was described by the brewery. So appealing. I've said it before, I'll say it again. My first hop love was Mosaic, and honestly, now that I brew, Citra is one of my go-tos as well. Just can't get enough of those hops. So, first up impression. Yeah. Definitely get that nice tropical flavor. Right on the front, there's that nice, juicy tropical vibe that's there. It's got a little bit of a nice hop kick right on the front of the tongue as well. And it finishes maybe with a little bit of dryness too. Kind of a citrus peel, grapefruit peel kind of dryness. It has a nice medium body mouthfeel to it. At 7.2%, it's not really too heavy, but it still is a nice, balanced beer. Yeah, this is just a nice, solid American IPA. It's not flashy. It's not hype. It's just right there. Those three hops, Citra, Mosaic, and Simcoe, just really fit the bill on this. I give this one a very high 3.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Toppling Goliath. I'm always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you've got one from your favorite local craft brewery, meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time for the next step in the homebrew project, a brewery visit in the Hawkeye State, and another beer to review. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5 Beer Plan 2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friend.